Hey guys, today we're going to play a game. We're going to play, what do these four things have in common? Sanding block, rattle can, that weird knobby thing, and a mask. Sanding, that's right. In this video, we're going to get into flattening out these sides. We're just about there, we're going to hit it with 400, but this time, unlike my last block sanding video, we're going to use two different types of guide coat. Normally when I block sand, there's enough contrast between this primer surface and the surface after it's been cut with the 400 to see what's going on. You know, I've been doing this long enough that you can see what's going on, and it is my work, so it's not like somebody prepares it for me and I start sanding. But in any case, if you ever do primer surface and sand it, you will see a contrasting color between the two, and I'll show you that. But for this video, I am going to use a rattle can, satin black, and some of this magic black powder that I pocketed from a buddy's shop. He won't notice it. Essentially it's a sponge with some black powder inside, and you rub it all over the side of the car to tint it, and then when you sand it and those little dark specks remain, you know how far to go. You want to eliminate everything so it's one consistent color, essentially getting rid of all the darkness. I find with a rattle can it'll plug up my paper, especially when doing a finer grit such as 400, so I really try to stay away from that to make the paper last as long as possible. I'll show you when we get into the differences. The reason I chose to redo this video is the previous video. I think people had a hard time seeing what was happening from that side. So we're going to give that guide coat a try and see what happens this time. Let's get to work. Okay, so I'm going to basically start at the door and work my way back because the way it's set up, this is about the brightest spot. I did add one more light here. Let's see if this makes a difference. Yeah, as long as I don't get my shadow in the way, we should be fine. So let's use some of this, pull this back. I don't even know how to use this. Yeah, there you go. I guess you shouldn't be breathing this, but if I put my mask on right now, you won't understand what I'm talking about. So, oh, this is weird. It's supposed to glide on really smooth, but that's weird. I'm not going to do too much. It is getting darker, look at that. So this has all been blocked out in 180. And we hit it with some urethane primer over top of that. 3 coats. And now we're ready to go with the final. Let's go here. When I'm sanding my panels, I like to go across the joints from fender to door so that after it's painted, the reflections are continuous. You don't have any joggles in them. I don't know, maybe that's why he left it on the shelf. He didn't like this stuff. It's not a very consistent, I don't know, whatever. Okay. And as for this rattle can, same type of thing, we'll do it up here. That way it'll dry when we're working down here. So you don't want to paint it on, you just want to mist it on. All right, good. Guys, see that? Yeah, it looks pretty good from this side. Let's put this back so I can take it back to him. He won't know it's missing if we don't tell him anything. And then this area over the door, and then this area over the door, I'm just gonna block it out and show you guys the contrast between, or even on the fender for that matter, between the primer itself and after we block it. So I got a fresh sheet of 400 in, and all we're gonna do is very gently glide over the surface. We don't wanna bear down into it and create cuts and grooves. After 400, we'll go take it up to 600, but just for this video, I'm gonna leave it at 400. I'll bring you guys in a second. I want to get some nice contrasting areas. You see, just really lighten the fingers. So that means this area is a little bit low. Okay, yeah, it shows up a lot better on this side of the camera. So you can see the darker areas. We have to keep going down until we get all that darkness to disappear. Now I'm just starting to cut through a little bit right there. So I have to be careful as to how far we go. We may have to reprime it one more time. That's not a problem. Let's keep going. Get rid of those dark areas. Basically to the center of the door, and then I'll hit the top of the door, see how that turns out, and then we'll finally get into blocking the front fender without any guide coat and see how that looks. I just have a feeling it won't show up again on the camera. What I'm doing with the sandpaper, just kind of tapping the board on the body, getting rid of the dust that gets built up within the paper. So right now this is perfectly laser beam straight, perfectly flat, no little dimpling anywhere. I'll bring you guys in a second. Let me do the top here where we did the guide coat. See, I stay away from the radiuses with the edge of the paper because if I come down and I'm sliding along, I can actually cut grooves into here. So I have different tools, a tube from an Alcan roll we use for the sealing liner to wrap the paper around to sand that out. You can buy them, but I find that works just as well. You want the paper to be sharp when you're doing your block sanding. You don't want it to get dull and, you know, useless and just kind of ride over the bumps that you do have, because then there's no point in blocking it out. You want your paper to be nice and sharp, cut all the highs down, cut the surface, and get down to a very flat level. There we go. Okay, so just looking at this surface area, there's a little bit of speckling. Let's see if I can focus in on it. Probably not. See, even with guide coat, it's really tough to see. Earlier on, you could see the difference, but right now, it's getting pretty challenging. Up in here, you can see the darker areas there. We're going to sand that until all that disappears. See, on an unsanded fender, it looks perfect. Smooth, all that stuff. Let's hit that with some sandpaper and see if we can see a difference between block sanding with and without guide coat. Let's stop there. Yeah, you can see the darker color. See that? Versus the sanded part. That was just one pass over top. We're going to keep going until all that disappears. Now for the newbies out there, these handles aren't meant to be gripped with a death grip. And you're not meant to file the side of this car down with your block. Even if you're using coarser grits, you have the block loose in your hands and just glide over top of the panel. And let the block and the paper do the work, not your arms. But you see, kind of diagonal like that, and then crisscross. That diagonal, and I'm staying away from this radius. I mentioned that before. Even if I move the paper over off the edge and had it roll up, it's still too sharp of an edge that'll leave cut lines. Follow the curvature of the body as you're sanding. And there we are. A little bit of a low spot right there. See that darker patch right there? I mean, it is so faint. Yeah, you can just see it. Versus there and there, nothing. So we got to keep going until that is perfectly flat from front to back. And that's what takes the time. This is a step that you don't want to rush, because after you paint it, everything shows. Doesn't matter, you know, all the work that went into the stuff underneath. If the paint job doesn't come out well, people are going to look funny at it. So you want to make sure that you take the time, block it out, and make sure that everything is perfectly level